Hello, welcome. This is the team Vessel, located in Boise, Idaho. I'm co-founder of the company. I'm here with my business partner, Nick Kawaguchi. If you are a growing product manufacturing company and you are going from ideation to commercialization, you've probably experienced lack of resources or some sort of supply chain challenges in logistics. If you don't have the manufacturing or supply chain talent internally, that's a big gap to try and cover. What we do here at Vessel is supply chain consulting, and we usually are working with companies that are trying to commercialize. So they've got a great product, it's gained some traction, it's growing, but they don't have the resources or the internal expertise to solve their problems. And then, of course, the world is crazy right now when it comes to supply chain, and we don't think that that's going to go anywhere. So what we're doing here today is we're going to go through some stories. We're going to go through specific examples of some customer situations that we've worked through. They come to us, they have this supply chain challenge, and then we figure out how to navigate that challenge tactically. And so hopefully that will help you. Nick's here to talk to us about some of that and some of the thinking around forecasting and supply chain.
Thanks, Derek. So one client in particular came to us and wanted us to help them set up their supply chain, source particular components for them to manufacture their product. And the difficulty was because their sales forecast wasn't real tight, we didn't really understand how many components to order.
And I'm going to add something here. This company is working with a very large company. They've gained some, traction with that company. They're trusted. So this is a great project for them. But as Nick is saying, sometimes the information is hard to gather even from their perspective.
Absolutely. Yeah, and this exercise can be extremely difficult for companies, and it's never perfect out of the gate. It is something that does take time. The benefit, however, to having an accurate sales forecast is that you know how much of components or raw materials to order, and if you can successfully map that out over the course of time, you can take advantage of volume discounts, you can take advantage of certain kinds of strategic like warehousing and things of that nature. So you want to be able to, in your sales forecast, really tighten it up and have it as accurate as possible. So how do you do that? It's really difficult, right? We've struggled with it in our company as well.
Mm-hmm.
So what we've found through our experience as well as our advisors is that to have an accurate sales forecast, you really need to be able to set those specific sales stages and have them very clearly defined. And what I mean by defined is there are specific actions or information that need to happen from one sales stage in order to advance to the next sales stage. And that has to be very clear. It could be a letter of intent. It could be a verbal agreement. There are a number of things that could happen in between sales stages, but if those aren't clearly defined, you cannot clearly go to the next sales stage. And so that is one area to start.
I will add that I set up the stage for this shoot this morning. Everything you see here. So this might not make it into the next part of the shoot, just so you know.
Now, if you're a founder and you're a small company and you're starting to sell and pick up traction, you've got certain assumptions on how you're selling stuff right now. Yeah. There's a way that you go about selling your product today. And you know that there are things that need to happen based on who you're selling it to in order to close that deal. I would test those assumptions as fast as possible and record them in your sales cycle.
So how do you get that information? How do you understand the proper stages, the pipeline stages, or what is the first step of understanding how you're going to set up that forecasting?
Yeah, it's a great question. The first step is really, there are a million different sales cycles that are online that you can look up. And if you just start there, maybe it's 5 stages, maybe it's an introduction meeting, maybe the second one is a value proposition, the third one is negotiation. And within those 5 steps, just make that your own. If you're starting to sell, you already know basically what needs to happen within those steps. So let's put those assumptions in there and let's start testing them.
If you're growing and you're gaining traction, you've been selling. So now it's going back and looking at what's worked and then organizing it so that you can operationalize it.
Absolutely. And you can organize this just in a spreadsheet on Excel or something. You can go so far as to using a CRM, but that's not completely necessary if you're just getting started. But I think the point is really recording it. You want to make sure that that's recorded so that you're testing your heuristics and making sure that they work and then changing them. Because this is going to be a living, breathing document that you are going to have to keep altering in order to make it more accurate.
So what are the really quick takeaways someone can take away from this and say, I can go do this?
The first thing is we got to record it. You
Okay.
got to put this down somewhere and make sure that you are recording any learnings that you have into that document. So
Okay.
you want to put that into your spreadsheet. You know, maybe you've got one thing that was unique that happened in a certain sale, and that's maybe an outlier. But you still want that data. You want to understand why was that an outlier, and how do we maybe make that into more of a common thing that happens within the sales cycle.
Yep. And with supply chain disruption issues, no longer is there the in-time manufacturing, or at least there isn't right now. So how does that impact that?
Well, one of the things that impacts is the expectations that you set with the customer. And that's probably a pretty big thing that you want to do fairly early on. If the customer thinks they're going to get this product in 3 weeks, but you know from your manufacturer that it's going to take 3 months, I mean, that is definitely a precedence you want to set. So I expect that probably within the last couple of years that a lot of companies have had to change their sales cycle to include that piece into a certain stage.
Yep.
And say, hey, if the customer doesn't understand this and that's not clearly defined, you can't move to the next stage.
Well, and we've seen it. Distributors are pushing back on expectations because they know if they keep not delivering the product, the customers are just going to lose it. We don't have a lot of patience for that. But if you tell people, it's going to be here in 30 days, and it's 90 days every time, and in some cases, we're talking to larger operations, they're waiting for pieces and parts that could be 2 years away.
Absolutely.
So if you're not setting those expectations, man, you are in huge trouble.
Yep. And I would say that is a key, probably to one of the first 2 sales stages. Probably intro meeting or value proposition or something like that you really have to define. And if your customer doesn't understand those expectations, that can be detrimental to the sale.
Yeah. Well, I'll say thanks, Nick, for giving us some information on the impact of sales and forecasting for supply chain. We're always happy to help and give advice on, sales cycles, pipeline management, that kind of stuff, forecasting. We're here. If you're having those challenges, just reach out to us. We're happy to help.
Absolutely.
Cool.
Thank you.
We're out.